Brothers and sisters, we wish to welcome you here today for the funeral service of Sister Jane Keetch. To keep this meeting a sacred service, we invite you to please silence your cell phone and other electronic devices. My name is Rick Allred. I'm the first counselor in the bishopric and the American Court 6th Ward. Bishop is unfortunately out of town today and asked me to conduct, and I'm honored to do so. We know prior to these services that the family prayer was offered by Brother Vernon Forsyth, Jane's son-in-law and Nina's husband. For our services today, we'd like to thank Sister Christine Bergeson, who's our organist for the prelude music, as well for Sister Mary Beer, who's our chorister. We will begin these services by singing hymn number 86, How Great Thou Art. And following that, the invocation will be given by Jane Keetch.
Father, we come before Thee humbled this day to celebrate and remember Jane. As a mother, grandmother, friend, and sister-in-law, neighbor, we're grateful for the opportunity we've had to know her, to be a part of her life, and to enjoy the journey with her. Father, we ask that Thy Spirit may comfort Darren and Gina and their children, others who may be mourning at this time as well, that they will fill Thy Spirit with them and show Jane's love as well. Father, we're grateful for Thy plan of salvation, reflecting on the great reunion that occurred in heaven as Jane met her beloved boy and other family members, celebrating life and the lives to come. Father, we're grateful for our Savior, for His life, His example, and His sacrifice for us, that we may return back to Thee, and the families can be forever. Father, we ask that Thou bless those who are participating in the program this day, that they will share memories and thoughts in a spirit that is rewarding and refreshing to each one of us. Thou will watch over us in safety throughout the day of travel, and continue to be with family as the sun sets and thoughts come back of Jane and their love for her. Father, we're grateful for all that we enjoy, for Thy many blessings, and say these things humbly in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Brother Keetch. Brothers and sisters, we'll proceed with the program as outlined. We'll first hear a live sketch by Gina Forsyth. Following that, we will have a musical selection, I Know That My Redeemer Lives, performed by Alan Keetch. Following that, we'll hear from Darren Keetch. And following Darren, we'll hear from some of Jenny's grandchildren, Hunter Keetch, Savannah Forsyth, Braden Keetch, and Cassidy Forsyth. We'll go to that point in the program. Sister Forsyth.
My story. Sorry, I'm going to make it a lot longer, I'm sorry. Written by Jane Ingersoll Keetch. I was the third child born to Max Bishop Ingersoll and Laverne Starr Ingersoll. My brother carried full term, but when delivered was stillborn and was born October 13th, 1933, and given the name Max Starr Ingersoll. A sister, Kristen Joanne Carroll, on May 3rd, 1936, was the only other sibling I would have. My birth weight was 6 pounds, and I was delivered by Dr. Stanley Clark at the Sarah Barnett Maternity Home in Provo, Utah, on November 4th, 1941. My mother liked the name Dixie, but my grandma Ingersoll, Nora Ann Bishop, who was terminally ill with cancer at the time, was partial to the name Jane. So not wanting to disappoint her, the christening name given the go-ahead was Jane Nora Ingersoll. I was blessed by J. Earl Lewis on December 29, 1941. I was besieged with whooping cough when only 6 weeks old, and was so tiny and firm, my care was left mainly to my mother. The doctor told her I would receive the best care possible at home, and she often wondered if I would have had the strength to overcome this terrible illness. I was given sulfur, the only drug that was available at the time. My first winter was a trying one for my parents. But little by little, my health improved, and eventually I got better. Whooping cough did have an effect on my eyes when I started school classes were required. Other than having the flu for the next 4 or 5 months and the normal childhood illnesses, most of us have one at one time or another. For the most part, I remained healthy in my childhood. I have very fond memories of my growing up years in Provo. We lived in the basement of Grandma and Grandpa Starr's house until we moved to Pleasant Grove. My mom had a twin sister, Lavon, and the two of them were attached to the hip. So all of my cousins were practically inseparable growing up. We spent many happy hours together at Grandma's house. Summer picnics at Canyon Glen and Provo Canyon were frequent. We entertained ourselves for hours on the merry-go-round, swings, and the turkey bars. I can remember finding money that had fallen out of pockets. A bunch of spanking kids in the sand. What a treat that was. The adults were avid coffee drinkers, and black was how they liked it. John remembers that as kids we were allowed to drink it anytime we wanted, making sure to add plenty of canned milk sugar cubes. We liked that a lot. I wore eyeglasses in grade school and hated them, often taking them off and leaving them in various places throughout the neighborhood. Braden. In one instance, my mom had to scour the ditch in front of our house to find them. I also remember my dad patiently going with me on one occasion when I came home without them. I don't have a clue what the price of glasses was back then, but I'm sure this was an expense not appreciated by my parents, if they had to be replaced. I don't ever remember them getting mad at me or tell me to accept when this happened. The eye weakness was a result of being so sick early in my childhood and made it necessary for me to wear a patch over my stronger eye, so I would be forced to rely on the weaker of the two. I hated wearing that patch. It wasn't because I was teased or made fun of. I just plain and simple hated wearing it. My family used to take turns doing eye exercises with me. We used a strange-looking apparatus that fit tight over both eyes, similar to ski glasses. My favorite neighborhood family was the Mitchells. I loved spending time at their house. My mom used to say, "You should have been a Mitchell." We spent many hours playing make-believe with hollyhock dolls, which were flowers that we picked and put together with toothpicks. Hopscotch was always fun. We drew a diagram on the sidewalk in chalk and tossed a rubber towel on the ground. We played jump rope a lot and played jacks was a favorite pastime. I was a brownie in the Girl Scout organization and went to camp at Trefoil Ranch at Vivian Park at Provo Canyon. I remember getting homesick, but also having lots of fun. We learned new songs, had cookouts, and made s'mores. And yes, I did sell cookies. I attended grades kindergarten through 4th at Franklin Elementary in Provo. My favorite teacher was Mrs. Christensen. I can remember learning to read in the Dick and Jane primers and recall learning how to point and write cursive. I've always loved reading a good book. I attribute that to good teachers I had in my early years and also to my dad. He spent countless hours reading to me during my growing up years, and that is a favorite childhood memory I will always cherish. He loved to read and always had his nose in a book. Where he preferred Mickey Spillane and was more into fiction, the library books I rented were Nancy Drew mysteries. My dad was a great one for coming up with out-of-the-ordinary nicknames for family and friends. Joanne remembers him calling me Blitz, and as I got older, it was Mondi Lou. Joanne was Afna. While we resided in Provo, I can remember going to primary once in a while, but never Sunday school. The church was just across the street from the Franklin School. I was baptized a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints on May 27, 1951. I was 9.5 years of age. By Calvin H. Bartholomew, and was confirmed on June 10, 1951 by N. Halver Madsen. The day of my baptism lacked meaning. I didn't understand what it was all about. Much later in my life, when I taught primary, I learned the full meaning and significance of that day. One of my happiest memories is my dad teaching me how to ride a bike. He would run beside me and hold onto the seat to help me keep my balance. It was a happy day indeed and a surprise when I finally took off on my own. My bike was a Swin. Joanne asked to borrow it one day when she went to a friend's house who lived just around the block. To play a trick on her, I moved it where she left it and hid it behind our house. She, of course, thought it had been stolen and was terribly upset. She was so relieved when it was apparent what had happened, but so mad at me when she knew what I had done. She was to be my sitter that night, and I was scared to be left alone with her. At some point in time, a cute little pygmies came to live at our house. We called him Sparky. It was supposed to be my job to take care of his basic needs, and I promised I would, but my playtime got in the way. One day I came home and he was gone. Dad had taken him to the pound because I was derelict in my duties. A commotion ensued. I begged, I pleaded, I cajoled. Please go get him, I'll do better. Dad had a very soft heart, so my plea did not fall on deaf ears. He returned with Sparky a short time later. When we moved to Pleasant Grove when I was in the 5th grade, Sparky went with us. And moved to PG we did. In August 1952, my parents were able to purchase a new home on 75 Maple Lane. The boxes were packed and we said goodbye to Provo. Our new house had 2 bedrooms, but Joanne opted to live in Provo with Aunt LaVon and continue her schooling there, so I had a room to myself. At first, making friends was difficult, but our neighborhood had 4 girls on the street we lived on who were my age. Sandra Lunsford was the first friend I met. She was cute and very friendly. Nona Kirk, Kara Johnson, and Louise Richards were next. Doing acrobats was popular on Maple Lane. My newfound friends were especially good at headstands, cartwheels, and bending over backwards and walking on their hands. I never mastered any, but for me a cartwheel was much too difficult. We walked to school together, and that was when I started attending church. They were great friends and role models for me. Other friends who lived across the busy highway were Linda Boren and Eileen Gilbert. When I started school and became acquainted with others my own age, I soon learned to like Pleasant Grove as much as I had Provo. She had a whole bunch of other friends in here, but I had to shorten it down, but there's lots of good stories. It was quite a walk to Central Elementary School, but we always walked, the exception being snowy weather. For recess, we played kickball and dodgeball, and I was always one of the first ones selected to be on a team. You would never know it, however, as I got older, whatever talent I had disappeared. Another game we used to play in the neighborhood with the boys was kick the can. Right around this time, TV was just emerging. Sandra was the only friend I had whose family owned one. I was always saying to her, let's go watch TV. I remember her saying the only thing on it is test pattern, but that didn't matter. I still wanted to watch it. The programming choices at that time were limited. Some of my favorite shows were My Little Margie, Topper, and American Bandstand with Dick Clark. All through junior high and high school, I chummed around with the same group of girls. We were pretty cliquey. One day on our way home from school, we passed by an old abandoned building. Someone had the bright idea of throwing rocks at the windows, some of which were already broken out. So we proceeded to do so, not at all thinking we were doing anything wrong. Sometime later, we called into the principal's office and asked about it. I believe my parents had to make restitution for the windows that were broken, but I don't remember them getting mad at me for such a foolish act. We decided as a friend group that we would join the band, and we each picked out the instrument we wanted to play. I chose clarinet, as did Louise. Nona chose cornet. Lorraine Falk was a fellow classmate from Orem who had chosen to take band. She played the clarinet also, and we sat side by side. In one of our conversations, she casually mentioned a close friend of hers from Orem named Boy Keetch. They were in the same ward. I enjoyed sitting next to her, and she would read music really well, so listening to her play helped me a lot. We attended practices in the summer and played in the Strawberry Days Parade after many hours of marching up and down the street by the school. I was in band for 3 years and at that time took private lessons, but decided they were a waste of time and money. Some of the best times I had growing up was attending Mutual. Perhaps it was because boys were there to interact with. Golden green balls, dress-up formal dances were common then. We learned dances to perform in the floor show at halftime. Boys in the ward were always a big part of the fun we had. I recall a time after Mutual when the guys took us for a ride over the Highland Bump. There were enough of us in the car that we had to sit on a boy's lap. Again, so naive, I remember being worried that I might be pregnant. Isn't that what happened when you sat on a boy's lap? One of my most fun activities was trying out for the pep club. There was a suspense of seeing if your name would be posted on the bulletin board announcing who the new members would be. Would I make it? Would I not? Yes, I was so happy. This was my junior year, and it was really fun to participate in the practices and be part of the group that performed during halftime at the home games. School dances at Orem High were so fun to attend. We did the stroll and the bunny hop. Our favorite place to eat was the Kirk's Drive-In. Delicious cheeseburgers and malts were brought to our vehicle by a car hop. It was during my sophomore year, 1958, that Leanne asked if I would go out with a boy who was in her ward at Orem. It was a name I had heard before, Keetch. It was a blind date, but not really because I had seen him and knew who he was. He had an older brother who drove a fancy blue Oldsmobile around, and he let Boyd borrow his car occasionally. He came over to my house one night after mutual. He was with his friends. We talked, and he invited me to a state dance in Orem. I was excited about going out with him. He knew how to dance, and we had a great time. We hit it off really well, and pretty soon we're seeing a lot of one another. Some of what he wrote in my yearbook that year was, "I'm sure glad Leanne lined us up. I have really had fun going with you this year, and I hope we can keep doing so for a long time. I'm sure you must remember the first night I kissed you on the porch, and your dad unexpectedly opened the door. You almost pushed me into the shrubs on my head. Oh well, that's the fun of living. We've had a few disagreements and quarrels, but they were forgotten in no time. I will miss you this summer, but there is still a lot of time left for us. A loving pal, Boyd Keetch. P.S. You are my girlfriend, and I love you." There's a notation I wrote on a piece of scrap paper while sitting in class one day that gives a timeline of our romance. January 26th, met. February 1st, first date. May 11th / June 5th, went steady. Also on the same piece of paper, Boyd Keetch, dark brown hair, blue eyes, 6 feet tall. Jane Ingersoll Keetch, Mrs. Boyd Keetch, Mrs. Jane Keetch. Boyd's birthday, April 9th, 1941. My birthday, November 4th, 1941. 7 months age difference. Boyd had started working for Henry Street as boat camp at Strawberry Reservoir during the summer months. He managed to drive to PG and keep our romance alive. I dated other boys in addition to Boyd. Sandra and Nona were both dating guys from Orem High that they were serious about. They got me lined up with some of their friends. Ralph Rawlings was a blind date. He was good looking and very nice, and I enjoyed going with him, but he was a little on the quiet side. I suppose I knew I was in love with Boyd when he got angry with me for going out with Ralph, and we had our first major fight, and I broke out in a rash. Since I had no guidelines on how to know if we were in love, I decided the rash must be a clue. My dad would call Boyd by a wrong name occasionally, Ralph, when he came to pick me up for a date. I think it may have been intentional, but I'm not sure. He probably got a good chuckle out of it. Boyd was a year ahead of me in school, so my senior year was slow in passing. He went down to Bryce Canyon to work the summer. He graduated, and that was hard to have him gone, although we wrote letters. By this time, it was obvious that we were serious, so boys from PG never asked me out. The one exception was when the senior hop rolled around and Boyd was dragging his feet and had not mentioned going to the dance. John Law asked me to go with him, and I accepted. It was our big formal dance for the year. I certainly didn't want to miss not going to the dance. The dance was fun, but I would have preferred being there with Boyd. My senior year was a fun one. We were the first class to attend the new high school, and 1960 was a good time to be experiencing life. I was on the yearbook staff and the prom committee. Boyd gave me a cedar chest for graduation. There was a dance afterwards, and then we went to Evanston with Darrell Hooley, a good friend of Boyd's from Orem, and his girlfriend Pat to celebrate the occasion. Right after high school, I enrolled in a 3-month course in Salt Lake for comptometer IBM training. The main objective was to have something to put on a resume and earn some money. After completion, I had job offers from Sears and Mountain Bell. I decided on the Sears job and worked upstairs in the auditing office. In December of 1960, Boyd surprised me with a diamond engagement ring for Christmas, and we tied the knot on September 15th, 1961. Our marriage was later solemnized in the Salt Lake Elias Temple on April 20th, 1996, and Darren and Gina were sealed to us. Trying to set a date was interesting. It had to be a time when there weren't any hunts scheduled. Deer, pheasant, on and on and on. We were married in the Pleasant Grove First Ward Chapel. Bishop Louis J. Harmer officiated the ceremony. We honeymooned at Lake Tahoe, Nevada, and Boyd was lucky enough playing 21 in Reno to win enough money to get us back home with a little bit of money in our pockets. Our first apartment was a brand new triplex in Orem. In 1962, Boyd was employed by Geneva Rock Products in Orem, driving a cement truck. The work was seasonal. He worked when the weather was good, and on and off when it wasn't. I was able, after a while, to transfer to the Provo Sears store and work in the cashier's office. Our combined incomes were a meager $8,314.88. We were elated later in the year when he landed a job with Hercules Powder Company, later on called Alliant Tech. We thought we had died and gone to heaven. What would we do with all that money? He commuted to the plant by riding in a carpool, so life was good. Mom and Dad were frequent visitors in our home, and it didn't take long to start asking when we could expect a grandchild. We were married a year before I got pregnant. Working in morning sickness wasn't the greatest experience. Eating soda crackers helped somewhat to keep me from throwing up. For a first-time pregnancy, it was fairly easy. Labor was induced by an intravenous pit drip solution, was pretty mild and over with quickly. Boyd viewed the birth for a short time through a small window until he found himself getting lightheaded and sweaty, at which point he found a place to sit with his head between his knees. It's like something I know too. Who says women are the weaker sex? Later that day, the new mom was presented with a fresh bouquet of flowers. Darren Boyd Keetch was born June 13, 1963. We were thrilled to have a boy carrying on the Keetch name, and we're so thankful we had a healthy baby. Being sleep deprived, sterilizing baby bottles, and making formula was hard, and bathing a small 6-pound infant is a bit daunting. Thankfully, at this time, we were living in Pleasant Grove in a duplex close to my parents, and Mom had first-hand experience with babies. She was a lifesaver for sure. Not too long after Darren's birth, I had a problem that was definitely not a common occurrence. My mind is somewhat foggy on the timeline of what happened when, but I got an infection. Come to find out, some cotton packing that was used to absorb blood during the delivery was overlooked by Dr. Hels and left inside me. Consequently, I ended up with phlebitis. I had taken a maternity leave from Sears, and when I went back to work, Joanne volunteered to tend Darren. One snowy day after I dropped him off in Lehigh and was on my way to work traveling down a 2-lane road, on a hill the car started to slide. I applied the brake. That sent me over the edge of the road and into a ravine upside down in the ditch. Thankfully there was a witness, and after knowing I was okay, he called a tow truck to pull me out. The car was totaled. My last year working for Sears was 1964, and I made a whopping $577. I didn't work again until 1971 when I was hired as an instructor for the European Health Spa. Gina was born October 19, 1965 at the AF Hospital. What a thrill it was to have a beautiful, healthy baby girl. We debated on a name for quite some time before coming to a decision. This was deer hunting season, and as soon as Boyd knew everything was going to be fine with me and her, he left to go hunting. My mother picked me up at the hospital and took us home. By the time the second child arrived, she knew pretty much what to expect, and it is easier. During this period, my dad had not been feeling well for a long time. He was finally diagnosed with lung cancer and passed away before he was able to meet his new granddaughter. Being pregnant during that emotional time was difficult. Going to see him in the AF hospital and seeing him in that condition is not a happy memory. My dad was a great supporter my entire life, and we always had a close bond. I remember the day he passed away. I was ironing. Mother called wanting to speak with Boyd so he could give me the sad news. Dad was only 55 years old. This is kind of where Mom stopped her life sketch, and there's lots of folders on her computer though of 2017, 2015, lots of life story stuff. But I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about some of my recollections from my mom. I feel like we had a pretty idyllic childhood. Both my mom and my dad were really good adventurers, and they loved the outdoors. Yes, I have lots of fond memories of spending good quality time together back when there was no phones. Mom and Dad both had a lot of friends. We had friends that were like family to us. And our regularly activities were, we did a lot of hunting, we did a lot of camping, fishing, riding motorcycles, boating, water skiing, and one of my favorites was going to the sand dunes each year for Christmas. As most of you mentioned, my mom was really fun to be around, and she had a really easygoing personality. I don't ever remember her ever getting angry at me. I think one time she might have grounded me, and I think it lasted for maybe an hour, and she told me to go outside and play. I don't remember what that was about. Have a lot of good memories. I loved being around my mom when I was young. She had lots of fun friends. I remember going to their houses, playing with their kids. And I could just sit there and listen to them talk and reminisce. And I just remember laughing a lot. It was so fun to be around them, and I love that. Mom was a great cook. Dad liked eating potatoes, so that was kind of a staple growing up. Which is funny because my mom doesn't really like meat. She made the best homemade bread, and Dad and I would sit and wait for it to come out hot of the oven. We would fight over the end pieces and devour probably just about a whole portion of just about the whole loaf. I remember one time we went to a comedy club with Mom and Dad, and one of the comics talked about the 4 basic food groups. If I recall it correctly, I don't remember them all, but I'm pretty sure there were potatoes, chocolate, bread, and butter. I just remember we all laughed so hard because the joke just seemed to be written just for my mom. I think Darren and I were pretty spoiled growing up. I don't ever really remember going without much. I specifically remember my birthdays. They were the best. And Mom made it really special for me and my friends. I remember every year I wanted to go to the classic roller skate and go roller skating, and that's what we did. I always remember she would have a really cute, fun, decorated cake. I remember one year for Christmas I wanted a baby life, but it was a really hot item and she couldn't find one. I think she was sadder than me. She ended up getting it for me the following year, even though it was something that I had outgrown by then. Another thing about my mom is she loved her sweets. All when we were growing up, she would hide Snickers bars all over the house in random places. I remember going over there one time for Thanksgiving, and I was pulling out a dish to put some potatoes in, and there tucked behind the dish was a Snickers bar. Some of them we found later, and they were really hard, and we knew they'd been there for a long time, so she must have forgot about them. Let's see. I kind of always wondered why she hid them. I don't know if it was because she didn't want my dad to know how much chocolate she ate, but I was always wasn't sure about that. Then I remember after I was married and my dad had passed away, my husband and I would go over to visit Mom, and all the time we'd walk in the basement. He used to sit down there and watch TV a lot. Empty bowls of ice cream and chocolate sauce sitting every single time we went over there. We found out later that you're supposed to put the chocolate sauce in the fridge, so I'm glad she was okay with all that chocolate sauce she got came out. Even up till when Mom got really sick and didn't want to eat anything, we could always persuade her to have a little bit of ice cream and a little chocolate truffle. Mom loved to play games. We had lots of good game stories, but I'm guessing the kids will probably talk about that. The other thing that Mom always looked forward to was summer when Darren's kids would come for the summer so that we could take family vacations. We had some great family vacations, and I've kind of forgotten that, looking through some of her scrapbooks, that she's traveled a lot with her dad and with her friends and her sister. You knew what was important to my mom by looking around her house. She had family pictures and family history in every room. I remember when she decided to build on the house, and we came in and she had pictures, just random pictures, not in frames, just stuck up on the walls with blue tacky strip stuff. And I remember coming in and just thinking, okay, that's really interesting. I was not a fan of it, to be honest. She had it in nice little groupings. She had, the grandkids, the family vacations. But over the years, it really grew on me, and I learned to love it, and it's really endearing because it was kind of fun and quirky like her. A little funny addition about the house, when after Dad passed and she decided she wanted to pass on the house, she called all of us over and she said, I have something that I'd like to run by you guys. So we all sat down thinking it was going to be something really serious. She sat us down and she looked at us and she said, I want to get a boob job. We were all really surprised, and honestly we didn't really know how to react because it was completely out of left field. So we all just kind of sat there, didn't really know what to say, and she looked at us and she said, Just kidding. But I do want to do a major home remodel. She said she thought we would be totally happy with the home remodel given the options. There are many more memories of Mom that I hope we as a family can reflect on regularly. Most recently, I just want to reflect, a lot of people coming through the line said, I didn't even know your mom was sick. She was always so vibrant and full of life, and she was. For the past 10 months have been really hard and heart-wrenching time. At the end of July, Mom fell and hit her head and ended up in the emergency room. And from there, everything just kind of snowballed. A week after bringing her home from the hospital, she had a seizure and again ended up in the emergency room. Due to her hospital stays and being put on an antibiotic, she contracted C. diff, which quickly deteriorated her health. She would be put on an antibiotic and start to feel a little better, and as soon as she completed her antibiotic, it would come back. We had home health coming in at this time, and since everything would go right through her, she ended up getting severely dehydrated. At this point, the home health nurse's recommendation was to put her on hospice and make her as comfortable as possible. Mom's advance directive stated that she did not want to receive artificial nutrition or hydration. Darren and I talked and felt like if she could get some fluids and get over the C. diff, she could get back to leading a fairly normal life. We asked her if she was okay if we took her to the ER to get fluids, as the home care nurse was being able to get an IV into her, and she agreed. We told her that we'd just get her hydrated and bring her home. We were able to bring her back home that same evening, and once the C. diff was under control, she started doing daily exercises and eating a little again. Then again, as soon as the antibiotic was done, the C. diff came roaring back, and we were once again in the ER due to dehydration. After this visit, they admitted her to the hospital and then sent her to rehab to help get her stronger. While in rehab, she had another seizure, which they thought was a stroke, and she ended up in the ICU for several days. At this point, she wasn't able to eat or drink, and they wanted to put her on a feeding tube. We knew she didn't want to be on a feeding tube, so we asked if we could wait until another day to decide. Thankfully, the next day she could swallow, and she slowly started on a soft diet. She went back to rehab, and while there, told me several times that she wasn't happy with her quality of life and that she didn't want to keep going on like this. She asked me if I understood. This was not how she wanted to live. During this time, she was still on the antibiotic and again started getting stronger and eating more. The night before she was to come home, she was so proud of herself and wanted to show me all of the exercises she had done that day. We went out of her room and she went up and down their little set of stairs, and we took a nice little walk up and down the hall. We thought things were looking up. The next day, Darren and I went to pick her up, and there was a marked difference from how she was the night before. We brought her home again, and the C. diff was back. She had just finished the antibiotic the day before. It was at this time that we decided to honor her wishes, call hospice, and make her as comfortable as possible at home, and no longer take her to the hospital. This is in December. It was determined by the hospice doctor that she was not going to be able to get rid of C. diff once going off the antibiotic. So from that point forward, we kept her on antibiotic just to keep it in check somewhat. As I mentioned, this was a really difficult and heart-wrenching time for us, but I remember being angry at times and feeling like prayers weren't being answered. But there were so many sweet tender mercies that came. The first was that we determined that in August that she would no longer be able to be home by herself. She was pretty weak, she had no appetite, and she wasn't able to perform a lot of daily tasks by herself. Due to her dementia diagnosis, Mom would get very anxious when she was at the hospital and in rehab, and would get very confused. We knew she wanted to stay in her home, and we wanted to be able to keep her there, but we weren't sure how or if we could make it work. It was a tender mercy that Darren was there, had a lot of time off work, and he was able to take too. And so he was able to be there in the evenings and nights, and then my work, I work from home, graciously allowed me to work from Mom's house so that I could be there to care for her during the days. I will forever cherish this time that I had to be able to serve her. Life gets busier, so we think. And we don't take the time we should to spend with our loved ones. These circumstances gave the opportunity to remember that and spend precious time with her. I will remember leaving her nightly when she was in rehab. And she would be so nervous and say, "I'm so confused, I don't know what to do." So I would say, "Would you like me to offer a prayer just to relax your word?" And she would say yes. So I gave her a hug and a kiss on me to say goodbye, and she said, "You give the best prayers, thank you." I will forever remember her strong will. She was a hard worker and a survivor. She always pushed herself so hard to do her exercises. Even after we were no longer able to get her out of bed, she would say, "I need to do my exercises." I'm grateful for the tender mercy as her dementia progressed. There were lots of things that she couldn't remember, that she never forgot us, her family, her grandkids, her friends and neighbors that would come to visit and call. I don't know if I would have been able to handle that. As it got to a point where she was sleeping most of the day, the only thing that we could really do to keep her awake was finding a good movie or a show to watch. So I will have fond memories of watching My Big Fat Greek Wedding, Captain Phillips, Breakthrough, Dr. Pimple Popper, and even the politically incorrect Dean Martin celebrity roasts over and over and over again with her. When we found something we liked, she liked, we stuck to it. I would just like to thank my sweet husband who picked up the slack at home. I would often make dinners for me when I come home. For my kids who gave me extra hugs and loves and kept us in their prayers, and helped in so many other miscellaneous ways. My friends, family, and neighbors, thank you for being my earthly angels. You checked up on us and helped us so many sweet and tender loving ways that are too numerous to mention. I love you, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. To my brother, I know that Mom and Dad are so proud of you. You did things the last 10 months that you didn't think you could do, but you did them because you love Mom. Thank you. I kind of miss my mom. She was my mother, my friend, my hero. She was my biggest supporter, and I could count on her for anything. In her eyes, I was perfect and could do no wrong. I will miss that. Until we meet again, give Dad a big hug. Keep making friends and play some of our favorite games. And I pray that I will be able to feel your presence and know that you're near me. I love you. See these things happening. I say, Jesus Christ, amen.
of the 20-minute talk they say to have. For those of you who know me, I generally don't have very much to say, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. Thank you. I was doing good a few minutes ago. Thank you for being here and celebrating this day with us. We know how wonderful Mother was and is still. She loved this ward. She was away at school at the time, but her and my dad got active in this ward a long time ago. And I missed it all, but when Grandma Keetch died, she wanted Dad to dedicate the grave, and that's when he became active in the church. And him and Mom loved the temple classes and were able to go to the temple later. But anyway, thank you all. She had wonderful friends. Thank you for coming, family. I just want to say what I think my mom believed. She loved to serve. She went on a mission to the conference center. She served in the temple, doing endowments until she could, and then she worked in the clothing department. My mom had a lot of faith. She was strong. Through my divorce, church has been hard. And Mom was a strong one. And it was nice being there with her because she'd love to come here and associate and be part of the sacrament meeting. And so it was nice for me to be able to come with her and spend church with her here. I know that she loved God and she loved Jesus. She knows that families are forever. She didn't have a mean bone in her body. She was kind to everybody. Gina and I would go to her when we wanted to get our way. Dad was the rough one. He would grit his teeth and that was cowboy boot. So we knew he was in trouble if we did anything wrong with that. But Mom could get away with pretty much anything. I'm going to miss her. I got to spend a lot of time with her, and she called me Boyd a few times. I'd go drive Chandler Road when she couldn't drive. She'd say, Boyd, Boyd. I'd scare her, I guess. And I'd look at her, Boyd, you dare it. And then maybe that was part of the dementia too. I don't know. I'll miss that. I won't miss when people thought we were married. She's so young. I look old, but people thought we were married. I said, no, that's my mom. Anyway, I love my mom. Gina and I have been very lucky to have great parents. We've always known that we were loved, and anyway, I love you, Mom. I'm going to miss you. Say hi to Dad, and enjoy your celebration with your family. And see this in Jesus Christ. Amen.
I might not cry after watching my dad cry. I was so dumb because I knew I'd just be massive. I tried to wing it. It's like not an option. So,
Quite a few months back, I remember trying to plan what I would say at Grandma's funeral, knowing one day sooner or later I'd be standing in this box today. And then I thought to myself, how ridiculous is that? Why would I not tell her these things while she's still here? So I wrote her a letter, we all did, and I'm just going to read off some of those things that I said in that letter if I can get through the tears. Granny Jane was the kindest spirit and so passionate about family and having fun. She never failed to make everyone around her smile and laugh. She'd be the first one of us grandkids to go on the scariest rides at Lagoon and Seven Peaks. She'd kick her butts at go-karts. And she would never turn down a game, even when she got kind of old and funny and forgot the rules halfway through. I'll forever remember her fondly and with so much love. I'll never see a chocolate-dipped ice cream cone without thinking of her and smiling. I know she is joyously reunited with Grandpa, and I hope she feels young and full again. I love you, Granny.
Okay, I'm gonna try to not be like my mom and take a whole hour. But it's gonna be hard to do because there's just so many stories. But we were all asked to talk about some stories and some memories about Grandma, and so I'm gonna do that, but I also wanted to talk about how she was one of the best grandmas I could have ever asked for. One of the reasons she was the best was because she loved her family, and you could tell. She also loved her friends. She talked fondly of her friends often, and she just loved spending time with us. We would go up to the canyon often for s'mores and weenies. I don't know if she liked that more for the s'mores or for us, I'm not sure, but yeah, maybe it's 50-50 on that one. She loved vacationing with us and experiencing new things with us. She would take us everywhere and always wanted to do everything and just wanted to make sure we always had a good time. She would always be there for birthdays, whether it was dinners or shopping or just coming over for cake and ice cream and singing at the end of the day. Again, I'm not sure if she was there for the cake and ice cream or for us, but she was there. And just kind of like how my mom said, growing up, she had these picture frames of us grandkids, and every so often she would switch them out until she outgrew picture frames and just started slapping pictures all over the walls, and we each had a section of the wall with all of our faces on it. And she loved game nights. Sometimes it would get competitive, and she may have been a poor sport if she didn't win. But I kind of feel like she kind of trained us when we were younger to love games. When we'd have sleepovers, her favorite game was Sequence. And as kids, we didn't really understand Sequence. So when we'd sleep over and she'd babysit us, she bought Sequence Junior. She may have been forgetful, but she wasn't stupid. She made sure that she could play Sequence any chance she got, and I think that helped grow our love for spending game nights with her. And it was always funny too because it sounds like she pulled pranks on her family members, and I would pull pranks on her by flipping over her little computer room rugs that have little spikes on the bottom, so she would walk over them and scream at me, a little shiz, but not that version. And that was a term of endearment. She would call us that often, some more than others, but she all called us that at one point or another. But ultimately, it was very apparent that we, her family, were her pride and joy, and she could never have enough time with us. Number two was, not only did she love us, but I knew she was there for us for anything and always had our back. My mom always told me when I was little and I was inconsolable. My mother was probably also inconsolable at the time. Being a new mom, she would come and save us a piece of cake and be there for me and my mom during our times of need. If she was around or nearby or she would come to all of our life events. For me, she came to my graduations. She came to everything that I had to do with my mission. When I came to my farewell, my call of me going through the temple, she was there for it all. She was even there for all of my dance performances and competitions. There was even a time when I was only in 2 dance numbers and I told her, you don't need to come. It's not going to be worth your time. And she still came. She still took her time and even though it was only 2, she was still there. I also knew she always had my back when I first started driving and I got my permit and I wanted to show her and Darren how cool it was that I could drive now. We came to a 4-way stop and I guess I was being too slow and wasn't going fast enough and I was honked at. She immediately flipped the liver and said, leave her alone, she's learning how to drive. And so, not only that, but anytime I'd ever get in a fight with my mom, I always went to my grandma about it and she'd always go talk to I'd always hear from my mom, so I heard you told grandma, because she told me to ease up on you and be nice to you. And so, she even had my back more than her own daughters at times. Number 3, as you can tell from her life, it just seemed like she didn't take life too seriously and she made sure to laugh often. Like stated before, she did everything for me. Even when I asked her to be my flower girl at my wedding, I could tell she was kind of nervous about it because, she's like, that's not for grandmas. And but we didn't have any little kids, and so I could tell she was nervous. And then come to find out, Cassidy, as she was helping her walk down the aisle, told us that the whole time walking down, she's like, I feel so stupid, I feel so silly, but she was laughing the whole entire way and just didn't take herself so seriously. I also think she didn't take life too seriously based on her food choices. There was one time we were on vacation and us grandkids loved her oatmeal. Come to find out, we watched her make it one time and she put probably almost a whole bag of brown sugar in it, and that's why it tasted so darn good. But it was always a joy. We always looked forward to going to her house and having sleepovers because there was always a fridge full of ice cream bars and popsicles, and there was always a bowl of vanilla ice cream and chocolate syrup. But ultimately, the one thing that I loved about my grandma was that she was the best example of being herself no matter what. And she loved everybody, and she loved the Lord. As you can tell from some of the stories that we told so far, and the stories that we'll continue to tell, Jane lived the life that she wanted and how she wanted, and didn't care what anybody else thought. And for me, as a girl in her 20s, trying to figure out life, trying to figure herself out, she was the perfect example to just always be yourself. And she was just always authentic. My whole life, she's always been the same kooky grandma my whole entire life. And I never saw her change who she was, no matter who she was around. And she was even herself going through the drive-thru. When we'd sleep over, she had a big fascination with Whoppers at Burger King. I don't know why. But we'd go get those for dinner, and every single time, well, not every single time, there was just one time where all of a sudden she just yelled at them and said, I want hot fries. And she really wanted hot fries because cold ones, are not the best. And so ever since then, every time we went through the drive-thru, it was always, I have to have hot fries. And it's something that I do to this day that makes my husband crazy, but I think for me, especially having her name, I want to live a life like Jane did. I want to live loving everyone for years and years and unconditionally, and loving the Lord and serving Him. Because I know that's how she lived. And it was amazing. And I loved her for it. And I have so many but ultimately I am just so sad that for now during this lifetime I won't be able to make any more, share any more life events, but I know for a fact after this life that it'll seem like we were never apart. And we'll be able to make infinite amounts of memories. And we'll be laughing all along the way. I love you, Grandma, and I'm gonna miss you so much. But I can't wait till I can see you again. That's a great statement.
I tend to take the humor route when it comes to sad things, because that's just how I combat stuff. So, Graham was a special quesadilla, and that's for sure. But, like they said, you can always leave it to Grandma to cheer you up and get you out of your funk and just say the right thing and be there for you when you need it. Whether it's going to the pool and having to turn around halfway because you forgot to shave one leg. Just always forgetting the basics, things that she needed every single day. We kept her head on, but she kept her head on. She always kept us going straight. I always loved making fun of her because, gosh, the amount of expired ingredients she had in her pantry was unbelievable. And every time I come home from Illinois and visit for the summer or winter, I went ravaging through that closet, and she always yelled at me to get out. And I was probably that one that, like Savannah said, I was referred to a little bit more than the other children. But there's reasons for that. I was a little rough on her growing up, but you know, that's kind of how young boys are at that age. I do regret putting the mat on the floor outside the bathroom in the kitchen with the spikes up, and she'd step on it and yell at me. I'll always cherish our game times together, and I will always love board games. From here on out, because of the time we spent together. And I'll always hear her demonic little laugh when she gets a Yahtzee. It's just her little chuckle and Yahtzee! She was amazing. She was an amazing human being. She was an amazing grandma. I didn't think I could ever have a relationship with someone like I did with her. She was a mom to me. And she will be missed. And it's not bye-bye, it's just farewell for now until we see you again. And I'm glad the pain is gone, and I'm glad you're going to have your place. And I see these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Since I'm the last one, I feel like there's not a lot left to say, but I just wanted to share some of my favorite memories of my grandma. She would always make us laugh, and so I thought I could share some of those times. When I started to dye my hair, one time I dyed my hair red, and she said I looked like Raggedy Ann. Every birthday that we had, she would take us to dinner and buy us something at the store. And as she got older, she kind of scared me when we would drive together because she was a little bit of a crazy driver. So I was always a little scared to drive with her, but it was always worth it to go to dinner with her and celebrate my birthday with her. She always wanted me to do her makeup. She thought I was some sort of makeup artist or something, but she would always ask me to do her makeup. And I even did it for one of her school graduations. graduation and school reunions. I remember one time when we went to the water park, as Brayden mentioned, she was very daring and she went down one of the big slides. And at the end, she got into the little pool of water that you went into at the end. And she just couldn't seem to get her feet from out underneath her. And so it was just a really shallow pool, but she somehow was like almost drowning, but the lifeguard had to come and save her. She bought a trampoline just for us kids so that we could come over all the time and play and jump on the trampoline. I remember one time when we went on vacation in Hawaii and we were on the beach and she accidentally locked the keys in the car and she tried to hide it. And so when we all came back, we're like, "What are you doing here, Grandma?" And she's like, "Oh, nothing." But then we learned that she had locked the keys in the car, and so we had to call AAA to come and them. As Savannah mentioned, I always remember her oatmeal. It was so good, and then we learned out that it had all the brown sugar in it, and that's why it was so good. But I'm gonna miss having that oatmeal. And also with the hot fries, I remember one time it was just me and her going through the Burger King drive-thru, and she asked for hot fries, but then this time she also wanted a hot burger. And so she really harassed the Burger King employees over that one. And then one time when we were having a sleepover, me and Savannah, we were just in the driveway, I don't remember why, but I apparently was acting up and being silly and goofing around in the back seat, and that made her drive into her garage door, and we had to fix that, and everyone blames me for that now, so it's a good time. And she always took us on such fun vacations, and because she loved being with family, and that was really important to her, so she always took us to fun places, and I'll always cherish all those memories that I have with her. And I do remember one time when we were in New York, me and Savannah had to share a room with her, and she was a talker in her sleep. She would talk, but this particular night, she just yelled and like screamed, and it scared the crap out of me and Savannah. But we just found out it was her screaming, so she must have had very vivid dreams. But yeah, I just have very fond memories with her, and I look up to her a lot because she was a very strong woman, and she never let anything get in her way. She was always happy. And even when she was struggling, she would still light up the room and make others feel happy, even if she wasn't feeling happy herself. And I really strive to be like that and to live like she did. I'm gonna miss her. I wish that I got to spend more time with her, but I know that I will see her again someday. I love her so much. I see these things in Jesus Christ. Amen.
It's been a great honor to be here and to come to know more and learn more of Sister Jane Keetch. And I appreciate the thoughts of you for your mother and your grandmother and the pretty music for your aunt. It's clear to see she's been a light in your family. One of the great life challenges is to have someone in your life who shines so brightly, who stood by your side and provided you support, whom you love with all your heart, to have them pass on. President Russell M. Nelson said it best: the only way to take sorrow out of death is to take love out of life. The prophet Job asked the great universal question, if a man dies, shall he live again? All of us have pondered that question. The Apostle Paul expressed a similar sentiment when he said, O death, where is thy sting? O grave, where is thy victory? This question we know is answered in the Book of Mormon by the Messiah, by the prophet Benedict. He said, there is a resurrection, therefore the grave hath no victory. And the sting of death is swallowed up in Christ. He is the light and the life of the world, yea, a light that is endless, that can never be darkened. Quoting Gordon B. Hinckley, he said of the Savior, he was the master of life and death, the man of miracles. It was he who made the blind to see, the lame to walk, the dead to live. And yet he was betrayed, arrested, condemned to die in an awful agony by crucifixion. He was placed in the tomb, and on the third day the angel appeared to Mary Magdalene and said, why seek ye the living among the dead? Then Gordon B. Hinckley went on to declare that these words, these next words, is the most profound in all literature. He is not here, but is risen. It's my hope for all of you as family members and for each of us here that you'll be able to feel the love of the Savior and the peace in knowing that this is not the end, but just the beginning for Sister Jane Keetch. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Amen. We appreciate all who have participated in these services today. We'd like to thank the American 426 Ward Ellis Quorum for setting up and for the Relief Society for the meal that they'll provide for the family. We'd like to call note to the casket bearers as listed on the program: Darren Keetch, Ernie Forsythe, Brady Keetch, Austin Evans, Steve Peterson, Mike Keetch, Jeff Keetch, Nathan Menlove, as well as the honorary casket bearers Cameron Holman, Rob Holman, Martell Menlove, Barry Holman, Neil Menlove, and Brent Keetch. Following these services, the interment will be at the American Fork Cemetery, or the grave will be dedicated by Brother Darren Keetch. We will close this service by singing hymn number 152, God Be With You Till We Meet Again, after which Richard Earl will give us our benediction.
wonderful service. We're grateful for Jane Keetch and her life, for the influence she has had on each of us, for the good that she has done in this world. We pray, Father, let Spirit to be with her family and loved ones this day, and always that they might keep her in their mind, that she might continue to be an influence in their lives for good. We're grateful for the Savior. We're grateful for the atonement. We pray that we might always have that Spirit be with us, to accompany us always. We pray for these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.